So while we're waiting for this to come up, quick show of hands. Who's heard of Cherre before? It's a big number. Keep your hand up if you actually know what we do. Awesome. So while we're getting the slides up here, Cherre is a data fusion company. People like to use I think, a very apt analogy that data is kind of the new fuel, right? The new oil. And as we move through kind of this world where we're changing into a world where fuel matters, people tend to use the analogy, well, I don't really care about fuel or oil, I really care about refined oil, and it's what I do with that data that really makes a difference. I want to take that analogy one step further. And I would say the vast majority of data-driven, whether it's models, applications, et cetera, in the market, think of them as kind of petrochemicals, the next stage of things that are driving from data. But the reality is that today the data is not this refined oil situation that you're thinking about. It's literally sitting in tar sands. And you have to take it from those tar sands into kind of this crude oil, and from crude into refined crude oil. And some people need heavy and sweet and light different types of different crude oils just to fit into that long-term model. So that's essentially what Cherre does. Our job is to place that entire pipeline from the data at its source up to a delivery model to be used for downstream applications and typically data science. So that means we handle all automated data discovery. That means we handle all data resolution. That means when you think about what a property is, all data from all your different disparate sources. Automated processing of that data, mapping to the different cardinal objects, a lot, a building, a unit, a person. And finally, very advanced AI models. And when we say AI on different decks like this, the joke is really behind the scenes, very little AI, a lot more machine learning and decision trees. We're kind of in that same world, but we are the best in the world at what we do. So that means we could take any data from any source, public, private, paid, free, internal, external, and connect that data in real time for an end-to-end delivery. Never have to worry where the data came from ever again. Never have to worry what happened to that data along the way. Never have to worry how that data was delivered to you with a fully transparent model so you can see everything that happened along the way and just consume it. We are the largest data set in the world right now. The middle number there, that 270,000, is now 300,000, more than 200 billion data points, more than 177 million properties just in the US, and one of the most advanced data platforms in the world to be able to analyze that data and make sense of it. Cool. So data's alpha, right? No. That's a really kind of quick situation here. We always love to say data means that we're going to do something better. We're moving to a data-driven world. Data means potential for alpha. It means that in order to generate alpha above the market, I'm going to have to use data. But what I do with that data is what really makes the difference. And it's not just consuming it. So we all want to be on that far left of the screen, or my left, your right, which is prescriptive analytics, which means I have such a high confidence in my data model and my predictions, somewhere in the high 90s, that I can just prescribe a business action. For example, hedge funds do this every day. Certain event happens, we're going to buy a share. Certain event happens, we sell a share. It's completely programmatic. Very little human thought inside of that process. It just happens. It's a trigger because we have such high confidence in our model that we just execute on it. But in order to be able to do prescriptive analytics, I have to be able to do predictive analytics, right? I have to have some kind of model that tells me what's going to happen in the future based on my past insight. But I can't predict what happens in the future until I was able to accurately tell you what happened in the past. And not just what happened, which is the easy answer, why it happened. What is the model that explains it in a high confidence? But I can't do any of that until all my data is connected. Sorry. And that's kind of that oil situation. This is the refined oil, and now you can start using those petrochemical activities. So let's get a little inspired, right? We're talking about the future. We're thinking about this world. It's a very different world. Think about automated valuations. We're already seeing pretty much advanced and everywhere on the resi side, clearly on the commercial side as well. Real-time trend analysis. What markets should I be going into? What markets should I be going out? These are all things that models are a lot better at predicting than humans. Automated risk analysis. What happens if the LIBOR goes up by 1%? What happens if we now drop the LIBOR for all our contracts across the US, which is something which is happening as we speak? How are these things going to affect our portfolio, our risk, our concentration? What if I have a flood in Arizona? How is that going to affect my portfolio? These questions are very difficult to answer in real time, and that's exactly what we do for the largest banks, insurance companies, investors in the world. But if you kind of take a look at what happens here behind the scenes, think of your operation if you're an investment manager. Most of your operations are completely siloed. If you have a brokerage activity, completely walled off from the rest of the organization, usually within some kind of Chinese wall. Valuation appraisals always sit within that vertical, right? Asset manager, different cell, broker services, tenant management, right? These are completely different silos within your organization which have huge amounts of data. These are just giant data plants that are all day collecting data, and you're not making use of it. Now, you always say, well, I got a lot of data. The question is, what are you doing with that data? And the answer is usually absolutely nothing. And that's the opportunity that you have in front of you. Being able to take all that data, refine it to a point that's actually usable, and build those analytics models on top of it to actually capture alpha. So let's think about what's needed to make that happen. So this is daunting, right? All of a sudden, we have this new skill set that we need that you probably don't have. I'm not sure how I collect data. I'm not sure how I resolve data, QA, make it deliverable. Is that your real core competency as a company? Are you a data engineering team? Are you a data science team? Probably not. This is probably what made you famous, right? Sourcing capital, sourcing deals, getting those deals executed that nobody else was able to do, that's what made you so big, right? And now you have to ask yourself, am I able to translate that skill into technology? And the answer is probably not. So let me leave you with some thoughts here around how we do build a foundation that works. So first of all, you know your business better than anyone else. Don't let technology companies come in and tell you you're doing it all wrong. Don't let them come in and tell you that they're going to change your world. You know what your business is. You know exactly what's going to add alpha. And make sure the companies that come into your room and make sure that they pitch to you, they can identify what alpha they're going to generate immediately. Make data insight a priority. If it's not a priority, you're going to regret it. I mean, at the end of the day, companies that are moving to a data-driven world, all the large hedge funds, all the large asset managers are going to capture that alpha. There's a huge, huge first mover advantage. Companies that will do it today are collecting massive amounts of data that weren't collected before. They're building models. The more time these training models run, the more time they become more accurate. They're going to capture the alpha that won't be left by the time you come around to it. You have to be willing to test. Doesn't mean that we now go chase every opportunity out there. It doesn't mean that we're going to pour money into every pretty much idea that has kind of popped into your mind. But it does mean that you have to test a lot. There are a lot of good ideas out there. Have very, very clear tests that are measurable. The outcome is very clear at the end. We can say, did this add alpha? Did it not add alpha? How do we take this to a larger scale? And finally, I know this is not a popular thing to say, but don't try and be a VC. One of the things that we see a lot in our industry is, if I'm already there and I'm already kind of this company that's investing in testing the technology, there's a very quick kind of assumption that, well, I'm going to make this company really big by endorsing them, a Blackstone, a Brookfield, one of these large asset managers. If I invest in them, they will be OK, and therefore I should get some kind of preferential treatment as part of this deal. I would caution against that for many reasons. But the most important is the skill set of being a VC is not the same skill set as being an asset manager. And very few companies are able to do that successfully. Some come to mind. JLL is a good example. Completely different operation within JLL Spark. Very dedicated fund. I think the jury's still out if that is a long-term strategy that's viable, but I think that's the kind of direction if you are thinking about building a venture arm. Otherwise, you should be opportunistic. Because there's something very specific that we can add value, something we can do together that's better than what we could have done alone, and think about that. Finally, I want to leave you with one thing. So you've probably seen this if you've ever seen me speak somewhere, but we always end with this. It's a Hunter Thompson quote. Hunter Thompson, if you've never heard of him, interesting character. Famous for writing a book called Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, probably one of his least interesting books. This is a quote from Kingdom of Fear. And it's on the top of the mountain, we're all snow leopards. And the continuation of that quote is, if you can do one thing in this world better than anyone else, you're a natural friend of mine. And that's how I encourage you to think about things, and that's how we think about things. What is it that you do better than everyone else? If that's data processing and data mining, you should be doing just that. But if what you do really well is choose the right investments, source capital, close deals, you should be focused on that. And find whatever that snow leopard is in the category you're looking for, whether it's tenant engagement, whether it's making space better usable, whether it's using us for a data backend infrastructure, whatever the case is. Make sure that you are the best in the world at what you do, and find who's the best in the world in their categories to do that. We only do one thing, but we're the best in the world at it, and we're the snow leopards. So thank you very much. Look forward to working with everyone in the future.